Very oh my god. This summer is over. Summer that I'm oh, so next 3 years. Yeah, definitely years. Yeah, and but like you're also like managing like okay, trying to get through it. That's crazy. Like I'm already that guy. All the things that I'm not gonna do. No, you can do it. I'm not gonna work on it. He knows. Sorry, a little technical difficulty. Yeah. It was like the walking into the building. I'm trying to get with all this. Oh, thank you so much.
Pictures you put a little stage.
Sorry for the technical difficulties. We're about to get started in just a second. Yes. Oh wait, yeah, my okay. No, my bad just for now. Okay. This is my presentation, but I do want to first welcome and hello, good morning, friends, family, faculty, staff. Thank you for coming to Geller today to see our presentation. We have 3 wonderful presenters today. We have worked really hard on these research presentations, so we're really lucky to have you here to come see it. I am Terry, this is Ling, and this is Whitney. You'll learn a little more about them as we move forward with our presentations. Just some procedural things for today. We do ask that your phones are silent, and if you want to record, it's actually going to be filmed by our wonderful Annie, so you don't have to necessarily record it, but please feel free to take photos, but keep a safe space for the presenters so they won't be so distracted. Also, since we are having 3 presentations back to back, we ask that you remain in this room to avoid any distractions. Another thing is questions. Yes, you may have questions during these presentations, but please do wait till the end of the presentations so then the presenter can get through what they're trying to say to you. So, once again, 10 minutes for the presentation, 5 minutes for Q&A. Yeah, and now we're about to start. So, my name is Terry, as I have mentioned. I am from Atlanta, Georgia. My concentration was in secondary history, one of 4 in our cohort. Small but powerful. And I'm excited to be here today and to present my presentation. So, whenever you're ready, start the time. Okay. So, my presentation is Someone Who Looks Like Me, Race as a Motivational Factor. My full name is Tamini Terry Shaipitisiri, but my students know me as Miss Shai, because, you know, that's a very long last name. All right. So just to give you a little background about where I taught this year, I was at McDevitt Middle School, which is located right here in Waltham, Massachusetts. It's actually one of 2 middle schools in Waltham. I first started off with my internship in 7th grade, World Geography, with a total of 92 students. And usually we have mini placements where we go observe different settings, so I would typically go to a high school, but I had the honor and privilege to be hired as the full-time long-term sub to continue teaching as the 8th grade world history teacher with my own 96 students. And in both of these grade levels, the classes were mainstream with students who had special needs as well as English language learners were in my general ed classes. While at this school, I paid a lot to the demographics of the students. It was a very diverse population, which is very special and unique to Waltham, and I was honored to be in there. But please do pay attention that the Hispanic and white population were the majority of the school, with African American and Asians being the minorities, but they were still there. But if you look at the statistics for the educators that were there, or the staff, you can see that it's primarily white, 77.9%. The reason why I'm paying attention to race is because in education, I feel like sometimes it's silence for something that's not discussed enough. I'm just trying to bring about the conversation so awareness could be brought to the topic. And also, if you think nationally about these statistics, the National Center for Education Statistics has reported that students of color made up more than 45% of the pre-K to 12th grade population, whereas teachers of color made up only 17.5% of the educator workforce. Another statistic by the American Association of Colleges for Teacher Education is more than 80% of the education teaching force is actually dominated by white women. So as a person of color, I wanted to pay attention to race and have my research presentation based on this to see if it motivated my students. So what impact, if any, does my status as a teacher of color have on the motivation and work habits of my students of color? Before going into the process of how I collected my data, I do want to show a survey that I have given my students. This is from the 8th grade. I asked them if they had teachers of color other than myself before, and 44.4% of them said no, while 55.6% said yes. However, to make this research more applicable to myself, I am Thai and Laotian Asian American, so I wanted to ask students if they had another Asian American female teacher other than myself before. As you can see, the numbers have doubled for no. From 44 to 88.9%, they have not had an Asian American female teacher. So to collect more data on my research topic, inside the classroom, I had surveys with the students both in 7th grade and 8th grade. I had a focal group of students where it was 6 7th graders where I had a discussion with them and asked them questions directly about race. I also had formal and informal interviews with the students. And outside the classroom, I continued to collect data by writing down my observations and field notes in my research journal, talking to my inquiry community, which is basically a professional learning community where I got advice for any issues that I was having or any areas of improvement or any suggestions. I also had a resource review. In order to really stay educated on the topic about race and education, I had to read up on a lot of different articles just so I could be on top of my own game for this time. I wanted to share with you the overall way that the students felt about me, or overall impact I had with my students at McDevitt Middle School. This graph represents my 7th graders, in which I asked them if they felt like I liked them, cared about their learning, and their well-being. A lot of students agreed and strongly agreed. For my 8th graders, I asked if they enjoyed the last quarter with me, and a lot of students agreed and strongly agreed. However, I do want to go to one student in particular in the 7th grade. She was actually Laotian American, one of the only at McDevitt Middle School, which is very similar to my own situation growing up. I was the only Laotian American in my entire middle school and high school besides family members. She was a part of my focal group for the 7th graders, and as I asked them about if they think if race impacts their motivation in schools, she actually stated, "Seeing you and having you as a teacher here, especially with somebody who looks like me, is like motivational, because I can see someone like me that can make it, that can be successful. It really helps with my motivation to work hard and do better." This picture actually is her right here. This is her mom, and this is myself. We're actually at the Laotian Temple in Bedford, Massachusetts. I was able to go because it was a connection that we had, and I myself have been trying to find a Laotian community here in Massachusetts. And her mom was actually able to FaceTime my mom to speak in our language and talk to each other about the Laotian community. And her mom actually stated to me, "I'm glad you're in education because not many Laotian Americans are." Okay. However, though I had one student who did share a similar identity as me, I had other students of color who are also impacted with me being a teacher of color. In my focal group, I asked students to identify themselves, and the student identified herself as an African-American black female. And I asked how many Asian American teachers she had, including myself, and she said none other than myself. And then I asked them to describe their favorite teacher, but do not include names, only provide the description and reason, and what was their race and ethnicity. She stated Asian, and she's a very good teacher with hands-on teaching. She's devoted, and even when you don't get a problem, she will still work with you until you get it. She's a fun teacher and can still joke around with you at the same time. So with this information, I was able to see that I did impact other students of color, but with different qualities other than my race. So in my 8th grade classroom, where I had my own 4 classes, I tested out different strategies that I want to do in my future classrooms. So my students actually asked me, they're usually named by colors, so it'll be like yellow class, purple class, red class, or green class, but a student came to me and asked, "Can we get class names?" I'm an educator who wants to incorporate student voice, so I said, "Of course." And they started choosing their own names, and they got Lit Class, the Finessers, Lil Boats, inspired by Lil Yachty, and the Grubbers. And I was able to turn the names that they chose for themselves into motivational phrases for success. So Lit for success, Finessing for success, Sailing towards success, and Hungry for success. And they would see this not only here to turn in their work, because definitely they needed to turn in their work, but also on their Google Classroom platform where they opened it and they will always see this every time they were doing their work. I wanted to really implement culturally relevant pedagogy, which is basically valuing the experiences and backgrounds of students into the classroom. I'm also inspired by Dr. Christopher Emden, who actually came here to talk about his reality pedagogy, which is also stems from culturally relevant pedagogy. Another example that I did in my classroom is, besides just incorporating their lingo into demonstrating who they are in the classroom, I once taught a lesson about the 100 Years' War. If you guys didn't know, the French and the British never had a treaty to end the war, but they ended their beef. And I said that in the classroom, the students was like, "What?" She just said beef. And in order to elaborate even more, I said beef means like hostility, tension. They're good. So the students were able to really understand what I was trying to say to them, and they were more engaged in the work. At the end of the school year, a student she was a Hispanic 8th grade female student, and she wrote this note to me. "Even though we only knew each other for a small period of time, I wanted to thank you. You have convinced me that I can do anything if I put my mind to it, and I've learned more in this short amount of time than in the entire year. Thank you for everything you've done, Ms. Shai, and good luck next year in Thailand." So she says Thailand because I actually received a Fulbright to go teach in Thailand for a year, starting in September. And due to this, I have found that race can have a large impact on the motivation and work habits of students of color. Race is not the only contributor for an increase in motivation and work habits of all students. I also had white students, but my research was focused on students of color. Student-teacher relationships play an integral role for student engagement, motivation, and work habits in academic classrooms. And pedagogical practices that are implemented in the classroom can help or harm students of color. Pedagogical practices, teaching practices. Yes. Conclusions or next questions and next steps. From everything that I've learned and all the research that I have done with my readings, I still wonder, will there be an increase of teachers of colors in schools that have a diverse demographic of students? Should certain pedagogies be required in schools to ensure students of color are supported? Will schools provide proper support for teachers of color in both K-12 schools and university levels? And then a new possible study with living in Waltham, going to school in Waltham, and teaching in Waltham. I'm wondering, does living in the same community where you teach have an impact on student motivation and work habits? And I think I'm going to actually extend this research to why I'm in Thailand, or I'm going to be living where I'm teaching. And with that, that is my research presentation. So I would like to open the floor up to any questions that you may have about anything in my presentation or in general. Yes.
Siri, I think your presentation was amazing.
Thank you.
I just have a question. Could you give an example of a pedagogy that might be under number 2, like something that theoretically could be required to support students of color?
Well, I think just valuing what students kind of already know, so taking and seeing what students say in the classroom how they understand the content, don't just dismiss it if it's not like completely relatable to students, but try to spin it in a way where they can make sense of it. And then they can feel validated in the classroom with whatever that they said. Yeah. Yes?
So what are you planning on taking from this experience in like, you know, predominantly white Hispanic school to your school in Thailand next year?
So I am aware that the demographics is going to be way different. I'm primarily going to be teaching Thai students. But with that, I think that with my own desire, personal desire to reconnect my own roots being Thai, I think that's just going to be that's going to help me gain more confidence in my own identity. And then once I enter back into schools, I will know, I will be more aware of my own identity while also being aware of like how different backgrounds and different cultures are in the classroom with students and with faculty, and just having that conversation to extend my knowledge and extend my research to others so they could be aware of how to best support the students. Because at the end of the day, all the research that we're doing is for students, which is priority. Yeah. Yes?
I'm just interested if either in your personal experience or through your research, whether you sort of identify where there could be a bottleneck for teachers of color to enter the system, whether it's in you being educated or getting hired.
Okay. So you said bottleneck?
Yeah, just sort of why there aren't more teachers of color.
Okay.
What seems to be stopping?
Okay. Yes, I get the question now. Thank you. I just have to make sure. Well, I know in my personal experience, like my family kind of really just, being immigrants, they just wanted a lot of, they wanted me to have a career that would make me successful. And by successful, sometimes it did mean like monetary means. So like being a doctor, being a lawyer. And I think sometimes with that expectation, students don't really pay attention to the teaching field because sometimes it's undervalued, I feel like. And even now, like my parents, my mom, she's like, are you gonna make enough money? So I'm like, but I'm doing what I'm passionate about, which is what I care more about. So I think that could be one instance. And then also people not being aware of the issues in education. Because I didn't go to a good school system myself, being from Atlanta. We had a lot of education disparities. We didn't have accreditation for some years. So just going into education just wasn't something that I thought of immediately if I wanted to be successful in the society that we live in. Yes. Okay. We still have 2 minutes if anybody has any questions, but if not, I'm happy to give those 2 minutes to another presenter.